Hello and welcome to OzLoL Podcast, episode 74. My name's Caraclossus. I am host of the show, and we'll be talking about the very first week of the Oceanic Premier League, which started last Thursday. We've had 2 days of games so far, and that's going to be the main topic of our discussion for tonight. We're also going to be talking about Tristana's new kit, because, you know, patch 5.2 is still not over, and yet we've got patch 5.3, which we might get to if we have time. Joining me tonight is Victor.
That's Warring Kingdoms Victor to you.
Well, to say, I was going to make mention of Warring Kingdoms Victor. I like the mask, by the way. Do you want to actually show it to us? Nice. It's very Plague Doctor. Medieval. And also joining us is Scott.
Hi.
Hi. And Steve is in the Twitch chat, but he's not actually here because he's dying of like TB or the plague or something.
That's why we have the Plague Doctor.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Now, our website is OzLoL.trinityforcepodcast.com. You can go there to get all our previous episodes, except last week's show. I haven't put that up yet. That's going to be the job for tonight. I actually totally forgot about putting it up, so awesome hosting on my part. So that'll be up tonight. You can also...
audio issues, that's why.
Yeah, that, and I just forgot about it. I downloaded the audio, and I just didn't think, hey, I should just upload it now. So yeah, that's my bad. Or you can also find at our website our links to social media, our Facebook page, and our Twitter feed. You can also donate, and it would be nice to get Scott a microphone. So that's goal number 1 on the list of things to do. So if you donate, that will help us to do those things as well as, you know, other stuff. And yes, that's our website, OzLoL.trinityforcepodcast.com. You can also go to trinityforcepodcast.com, and then you can find the links to our sister shows, the T-Force LCS Rundown, and the T-Force proper. So make sure you check that out. Now, Battle Arena. So, Battle Arena, because the Oceanic Premier League is Mondays and Thursdays, which was... we'll be doing the podcast on Wednesday nights, and I won't be hosting the Battle Arena, but we've got Trippy Guy. He's stepped up to volunteer to continue Battle Arena. So
here's to our community.
Yeah, the top guys. So Matt Pack and Trippy Guy and Archidera, those guys are great. So they've Trippy Guy had 1 game last week. So if you're not watching OPL, which we do encourage you to watch, but if you're not watching it, if you're happy to catch up with the VODs, make sure you check out Battle Arena. Bronze to gold players, it's there to help you get better. So, and the VODs go up at youtube.com/TForcePodcast. All right, let's get into some real stuff.
And send us questions too. So we can
I have questions on Twitter that I didn't even throw in the show notes yet.
Well, we're not going to be talking about them today because we'll be talking about OPL and other
still,
stuff.
jump on Twitter and ask us questions, and we might put them in the show. So let's do some OPL stuff.
That sounds good. Yes, let's talk APL. So, week 1, we had 2 days of games, starting Thursday, and then second day was Monday. And of course, the spoiler alert, the results, Chiefs and Direwolves went 2-0. Legacy, Rich Gang, Immunity, and Sudden Fear won 1 each. And Fornot and Avant-Garde went 0-2. So, everybody played 2 games. You guys got it weirded backwards and... Anyway.
That's the important part. 2 went from one hand to the other hand. It doesn't really matter in which order, but it happened.
Yes. Or something. So, what do you think of game week 1? How did we feel? The teams went. What was the surprises? What were the expected results? What do you guys think?
I don't know. Ask Steve. Oh,
Ask
wait.
Steve. He's not here. Well, he did alright. They went 1-1. So, yeah, that was good. Good for them. I mean, sorry, you go first, Scott.
So big notes for me. Chiefs are back to their winning form, which I've just been a big fan of the Chiefs since forever. I think everyone who has followed the Australian scene for some point in time is a Chiefs fan, just because of what they were able to do in that first season of going to the Wildcards. So it's good to see them back to their winning form and that they're past the legacy hurdle. Good job, guys. Keep it up. Next up, IM. They're obviously at the moment, because I'm no longer with Avant-Garde and whatnot. IM are actually my second favorite team. Well, if you go for players, I probably like more players than I am. I'm better friends with more players than I am, so it's good to see those guys stepping up. I was really worried for them going 0-2 against Rich Gang, but they managed to pull that one out in the end. And finally, the huge note for me was that Dire Wolves have pulled form out of nowhere. Let's go back to the last time we've properly seen Dire Wolves, and that was at PAX Australia, and they just done 2 roster swaps, and no one was expecting very much of them, and they did manage to take a game away from Avant-Garde, who we all know went on to win PAX, and the regional finals, so that is fantastic. And then obviously in the negative corner, Avant-Garde going 0-2 with, it's kind of like the reverse. Now, the shoe's really on the other foot because, going obviously again back to PAX Australia, Dire Wolves walked into their first run.
It's an American team that went poorly in their first week after being one of the best teams in North America, Cloud9.
Okay, sit down.
Yeah, except the thing about the difference for Avant is that they've lost really they lost their 2 best players. Like the players that really carried them to the win for the Oceanic regionals, which was Veritas and Nada. Veritas has gone to the US. Nada's gone.
I wouldn't so much say that they're the 2 out and out best players on the team, and carried. I do agree that that they're the best players on the team, but the fact that they carried them to that victory, Kenzie definitely played very, very well.
Yeah.
And look at Porky. Porky's always been around as one of the stellar top laners in a region that, in my personal opinion, which shoot me down for if you want, but it's it's my own opinion. We do have a very weak top lane, and Porky has always been consistently one of the best. Him and Swiper I do rate as the 2 best top laners.
I'm not saying that the other members on the team aren't good, and certainly the way they played this week was they did okay. Like Kenzie did okay, Porky did okay.
No one really shined, I think, was the problem.
Yeah.
They were all decent.
Well, yeah.
No one shined through on that roster, and that's definitely something that we need.
And I think that was the tipping point for Avant was in last year in the Oceanic regionals was Veritas and Nada. They dominated their lane, or they did really well in their lane. They just if you think about it, a bunch of these teams are kind of on the fence. They could be really great, or they could be pretty terrible. For last year, Veritas and Nada was that decisive thing that tipped them over the edge to be the regional winners. And without them, I think they just weren't anywhere near as strong. And I mean, they got Dire Wolves are, I agree, looking very good. But they got beaten by Rich Gang, who, yes, they're a good team.
New guys on the block.
Yeah, the new guys on the block. They're not regional champions. So you'd sort of think, well, but they get pretty hard. They get stomped pretty hard by Rich Gang. Rich Gang really did a number on them, I think, which is kind of not how it should be if you're regional champions. So I think Avant's kind of, in my view, they basically did there was a tipping comp. Riot did when you submitted your picks, and I mean I thought Avant-Garde would do better than what they did. I thought they would have done much better, and they just didn't. So, but Chiefs, I think, very exciting. I'm a big Chiefs fan. If I'm going to pick a team to be my team, it's going to be Chiefs, and I'm really happy with the way they played. They really, especially against Legacy. Legacy, they are a top team. I think it really will come down to them, Chiefs and Legacy. They have both clearly got superior form compared to everybody else. I'll be interested to see how they go against Dire Wolves. I think they're probably still stronger than Dire Wolves, but I think Dire Wolves can probably, they could actually still pull out wins. But yeah, for Chiefs to come out so strongly and have such a dominant game against Legacy, I was very, very happy with that. So, yeah.
I mean, you mentioned obviously going forward some big matchups coming up. You think that Chiefs and Dire Wolves is going to be one? To be perfectly honest, my favorite matchup out of the entire Oceanic scene is Chiefs versus Immunity. Just because whenever those 2 teams play, you always get both teams, and they just get in each other's face, and they're at each other all game, and there are only very minor differences, and the teams like to play in very similar styles, and I love that. And to me, that's kind of like the pinnacle. of the OPL. I can't wait for that matchup, really, to be perfectly honest. So.
I've got something to say about immunity, but Victor, what are your thoughts of week 1?
Yeah, basically because I did a whole Victor show about Fortnite in my own time, and I basically just sat there and swore at them for 20 minutes. Now, that's probably a bit rude to say. I'm not full Victor mode at the moment, but Fortnite, I have to wonder how they got in the OPL to begin with, because they're not that impressive to watch. And so, if you want to hear as raw as I get on the and borderline abusive, then you watch my Half Hour with Victor show, starring me, Victor, the best Victor, the real Victor, and definitely the only Victor you should be listening to. However, I did end that podcast by saying, "For not, I will happily coach your team for free and take you all the way to Worlds 2015." And I'm not joking. I'll take you there. You just watch.
Victor,
but,
Sure.
with Rich Gang. Like, you've got the whole personality and everything just fits with Rich Gang. You're going for the wrong team, man.
Yeah, but Fortnite are the bad team. If I can take the bad team and make them the best team, then that just shows how great I am. But you know what, Rich Gang, if you want some Victor action coaching your team, I am the greatest player on the planet. I make Faker look like a scrub. And I hope to hear from you soon.
Fortnite. I mean, really, there's only. I mean, Fortnite and Sudden Fear are really. I think they're going to struggle. They're just not that impressive. I mean, they're really like. There's only so many top players in the Oceanic scene, and I think they've probably all found a home now. I mean, just looking at. I mean, you can actually go to. So there's actually an oc.lolesports.com, and you can actually get the standings for the open ladder that's also happening at the moment, and I'd be interested to see who's in that team, because in those teams. But you still got Villains, which are presumably they missed out from the Challenger, series this year. But none of the other teams look familiar. So maybe there is some like hidden OP solo queue players in there, but
I mean, there's still like Pause Perfection. They're all bouncing around, but yeah, go back to Fortnite. I agree.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well, Fortnite, my biggest beef with Fortnite is that there's no structure behind that team. I don't feel like there's anyone telling them, like putting team comps together, and I don't know if there's anyone shot calling. I don't feel like there's any kind of leadership going on behind this team or in this team while they're playing. Who's saying what to do? Who's calling the picks out? Because they got like part of a poke comp, part of a pick comp, part of a team fight comp, part of a split comp. They're like, their comps are just absolutely ridiculous what they're picking. Nothing synergizes, and their calls, nothing's decisive, and they're trying to force things when they're behind, and they think they're on the upper hand. Obviously, they've died like 20 million times. Of course, they're not going to be up ahead, and they're trying to aggress. The team, what they're doing does not make any sense to me, because I just do not feel like there is any kind of leadership going on there, and you really need some kind of leadership squad, some kind of background squad, analysts, coaches, whatever. There's plenty of people in Oceania who are willing to volunteer to do this stuff. I am volunteering to be your coach. I will be your coach for free.
Yeah, but I mean, with that, it almost with a little bit of the Fortnite's play, it almost feels like they're trying to give you the shock, and like they're trying to
be the unicorns of. They're trying to be the unicorns of love that aren't good.
Well, they're in the OPL for a certain particular reason. But anyway, I'm gonna go with that. They sort of feel like they're trying to just throw random stuff at you and have you be thrown off your game by what's being thrown at you and how it's played out, and that they're relying on other teams' mistakes. And at this level, that can't happen. In the Challenger and up into, obviously, the higher echelons of the OOL, yeah, maybe that can and will work. But this is an entirely different competition. And, I mean, you mentioned, obviously, the right stuff. I'm not sure what the go is there, but once somebody obviously starts to take hold and they develop sort of their own unique identity as a team and what they want to be doing, we'll see them grow through the split. And more than anything, especially for both Fortnite and Sudden Fear, this is something that I'm really, really keen to see at the end of the split. Are they going to take one game from Direwolves that stopped Direwolves from getting 4th place? Are they going to take one game from Chiefs that just... And it's, it's just...
And the other thing is, like, the players that make up these teams haven't been around anywhere near as long as even Rich Gang and Avant. Like those guys, most of the players in those teams have been around for quite a while. Who've been in other teams in other, they might have been on Curse or NV or whoever. Where I don't think any of the names in Fortnite or Sudden Fear are that familiar. I think Fortnite's got maybe one player who I've heard of before.
I will say though, Fortnite do have a couple really mechanically impressive players. I find C&J to be quite impressive, and Carlos has his moments, though I think he builds quite terribly sometimes.
Carlos has actually been around the cyber gamer scene for an incredibly long time. You just reminded me of him. And I've seen him bounce. The problem with Carlos is that he's bounced around so many different teams that he's unsure, I think, how to play correctly and to his specific lineup. So, yeah.
Like I'm watching some of his like Maokai games. He's building team fight items and then he's split pushing for the whole game. And it's like you're Maokai and you've rushed to Righteous Glory and you're split pushing. Still, like just. But like you see some of his Irelia plays, and there's that sweet spot where in the later stages of the mid game where he can just go absolutely ham on Irelia, and you think, "Fuck, Carlos is a god."
Yeah.
And then there are other times where you're like, "Oh wow, Carlos is a total snoozer."
I mean, what will be interesting to see, the format now is very different from last year. Like last year everything was a series of events. You had a weekend of play with Cyber Game, and you had a weekend of this, and then you had the regional, which was a weekend where this is 2 games every week, consistently for 7 weeks, and then a regional playoff. So I think that's going to definitely work to the favour of Legacy and Chiefs, because and probably even to Immunity to a extent, because they are a lot more experienced. Particularly with Avant, they kind of came out of nowhere and won this one event. It's not like they spent the whole year building up into this climactic thing, where I think Legacy was different. Like, they did kind of build up, the quality of their play built up over a period of time. So, yeah, that's it. So, I mean, I think, it'll be, I guess, the real thing for sort of Sudden Fear and Fortnite, and to see how well this format works, is obviously they're not very good at the moment compared to others. But will they get better in that 7 leagues? Will this particular format allow them to grow and get more experience in that sort of more competitive environment, away from just solo queue type stuff, and even like the semi-professional, like CGPL, like those guys do great work, in ACL, but it's not sort of consistent enough, really, in the same way as this. So yeah. I think we should almost like. It'd be good if we had like the fantasy stats, like all the points that you get for fantasy LCS. Like, it'd be good to compare their stats from this week to week 7 and to see if there's a difference there.
And with that, I mean, you obviously just mentioned CGPL and ACL. ACL wasn't running leagues. I think that was, if there was 2 sets of individual leagues that you could just bounce between, and even the casters would probably bounce between and just go to like, if there was specific sets of, because there are, I mean, you've got Uber and Elfish Guy that are working CGPL, and whoever's doing ACL, they're working their individual events and whatnot, and then you see them bounce across and grab stats from the other one. If it was more of if there were 2 separate leagues that were running alongside each other, that were, maybe playing, then we would have seen something like this earlier on. But it's good to see, because CGPL was running best of 2s. No, best of 3s? Best of
no,
2s.
I think it might have been best of 2s. Yeah.
Yeah, in the most recent season. And that was really good. You immediately saw the teams, they're adjusting their play and whatnot over the course of a season to exactly what the other teams are playing. But there was, obviously the locked 8 teams. It was only a short ladder, and there was barely anything streamed. But now we've got, I think the best part about this all is we're getting direct access, everything's being streamed, we're getting able to see these teams grow.
And there's real money on the line. I mean, that's the thing, yeah. So, like, unlike CGPL, there's kind of not really money. I mean, I think there is right at the end, but it's not much. Where this is like,
for CGPL, obviously had all the money that was on the line, whereas it wasn't on the line, in the league phase. Yeah. It was only the top 4, obviously, are going to CGPL, and everyone else isn't. Yeah. And those 4 teams get money, and nobody else does. Yep. And that's to go from something like that to something more like this. It's incredibly exciting to see, and yeah, I mean, we're going to see these teams as well. I think I mean, we've already been over, I guess I've sort of mentioned some of the more exciting facts, but I really want to see direct, comparable evidence of the growth of a team over a couple of patches. Because, I mean, for me, last year when Legacy did win the regionals and head off to gain their access and qualification to Gamescom, it was Minky's patch. That was the exact patch that he was best on. Trundle was big, Jax was big. Those were the only two champions he really played and played to any sort of success. And that ended up with them going to Gamescom. Whereas you look at him on every patch since and every patch slightly prior to that, and he wasn't anywhere near as good.
Hi, Blackjack.
Actually, I just wanted to bring up before we sort of move on. Like, so let's talk about immunity. So Scott, you said you're excited for them. I want to. My impression, because I mean, they are a team that is very much on the fence of could be great, can be terrible. I think this week they had quite a bit of that going on. So they got beaten by Direwolves pretty convincingly, I'd say. Rich Gang there looked better, but not outstanding.
They really need to find their composure.
Yeah.
They're a bit like sort of, whoa, we don't know which way the ship's rocking.
Yeah.
But we're just gonna keep. Whoa.
Yeah.
I'd like to see them do well because I think when they play well, they got really good structure and they can keep together really well and make good map movements and whatever. But like none of them have to be like absolutely amazing mechanical players. I think they can pull it off without top-notch mechanics.
Yeah, that's the thing about immunity. It's just when they're good, they are so good, and you see some of the best gameplay within the region out of their team. But when they're not, like they shouldn't be in OPL.
Yeah.
And they're two different strategies of night and day. And for me as well, like they've got a brand. What you also have to remember is that yes, they've got another roster swap as well. They're one of those other teams that also has a roster swap. How is this new mid laner going to affect them? You know, is it?
I mean, Key has been very effective on other teams. Like, there's been particularly.
Absolutely.
I mean, his mid lane Swain. I don't think I've really seen anybody else do that. And there's been games where he is crushed with Swain, and you're just like, okay, I didn't expect that. So he's definitely got the raw talent, but I guess it's how does it harmonize with everything else? And I mean, T-Gun. I think T-Gun's probably one of the best supports in the oceanic scene. Like, I think he is top notch. And yeah, we had him on the show previously, and he really does know his stuff. So
I think rarely I see T-Gun like underperform. I've watched him a lot, and he performs really well, and sometimes like shit hits the fan around him, and he just keeps trucking along.
Yeah.
And even when everyone else starts going on tilt, like he's still pushing forward. I really can see that in his gameplay.
And I mean, I chatted to him directly after their loss to Direwolves at EB Expo, and he was just still so positive and wanted to get out there and keep going forward as a player. Because I actually walked out of EB Expo and had a really good extended conversation with him, and he's just one of those players and people that is such a good driving focus for a team. If, you know, Immunity can just channel that and channel it into focus and the drive towards you know, their goals, which I would definitely say on their best day, best team in the region. You know, it's just a matter of getting to that point and making that a consistent thing to happen, and that's a big challenge for Steve. And I really want to see. I'm actually really keen, more than anything, to discuss and talk to the IM players to see how they're evolving as a team and how they're trying to hone in on that consistency, because that is one of the toughest things in any sort of game like this is nailing that consistency and finding ways to help you nail that down. You can find ways to improve as a player. You can find ways to be able to make those plays on the off chance, but can you find ways to be able to do that all the time? That's the really,
can I
really hard play.
Actually, one thing I want to make, does everyone know Thorin? Duncan Shields.
Yes, yeah.
That person that some people like and a lot of people don't. Thorin put out a video called Thorin's Thoughts, and he did one like, now this is just like him just coming up with a thought. It's similar to the Victor show. He comes up with a thought and then he just talks for 7 goddamn million hours. And he did one recently on team leaders, and I think everyone should watch this, even though it's in specifics for CS:GO. He talks about how team leaders really are one of the most important things to a team, and so I think a good watch right now for the Oceanic, everyone in Oceanic teams, Fortnite especially. I'm watching you, Fortnite. Look up this video. It's Thorin's thoughts, team leaders, whatever. And give it a watch. He starts talking about CS:GO leaders in particular, but the start of it, he goes into good detail about team leaders, and I think everyone needs to have team leaders, just like one figurehead or maybe like two, like the assistant coach. Where's my assistant coach for not? Where's my coaching position?
Let's move on to the games that are happening this week. So this week we've got Legacy versus, so Sudden Fear, Avant-Garde, Legacy, and Immunity are playing Thursday, and then Friday you've got Chiefs, Fortnite, Direwolves, and Rich Gang all playing. So what are the games of this week? Which ones do you guys reckon people should be definitely watching?
Chiefs versus Direwolves.
Yep.
If that
Absolutely.
is happening, is that one of the games this week?
Yeah. So that's Monday. That's on
Awesome.
Monday.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think Avant versus Immunity. I think if Immunity really want to show some, show that they're, gonna be contenders, they need to beat Avant. Like they need to really, that, because if they can beat Avant, I mean that's really like, if at this stage you think the top 3 slots are going to go to Chiefs, Legacy, and probably Direwolves, and that 4th spot I think is up for grabs. And Immunity really needs to stamp their authority and just really pummel Avant and continue to beat Rich Gang. I think those guys are
and it's one of the longest running rivalries in esports in Oceania as well. Is the best part about it as well.
Is Immunity versus Avant?
Yep.
Yeah. And actually, similarly,
it's one of the best rivalries in Oceania esports in general.
Actually, I think it's a pretty key match for both Avant and Immunity. The final match of Thursday.
If Avant drop this game, they're pretty much almost guaranteeing themselves in relegations, a spot in the relegations. They need to win this game. If they fall behind on this game, their season's next to done. They're looking at scraps.
Well, I must be a total weirdo because I'm watching the Fortnite games.
We need to get you like a beanie or a scarf or something before not.
I hate that team so much.
And you talk about them all the time.
I want to see something happen in that goddamn team, and plus it gives me good and they give me some really good victor material as well for my podcast.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well,
I want to see some improvement.
Actually, before we move on, I just want to say, whoever I really admire Rich Gang. Like, I think they're the only really interesting team in the entire Oceanic scene. Like, all the other teams, all their photos are super serious, and they're like hardcore esport warriors and all this sort of stuff. And Rich Gang are just like hilarious and interesting. And I mean, some of it's a bit wrong, like some of the stuff that because Poop Steve 420, who's a Australian streamer, I think he's the one who does all of the memes and all the rest of it. And some of it's a bit wrong, a bit sus, but by far, like, to actually have a team that's
I'll coach Rich Gang as well. I'll coach both teams. That's fine.
No,
Rich Gang. If you watch a Victor show, none of that stuff matters. None of that stuff fucking matters one bit.
Yeah. So I admire the fact that there's actually a team out there who wants to have some fun with their public image. So in some ways, I hope that they do really well, just so that they hang around, because it's hilarious.
I don't think this will be their only split. I think they'll be in the next one.
Yeah, no, I think they are pretty good, and I think if they don't,
It's nice to see someone having fun.
Like I think we'll really, so 4th, 5th, 6th is going to be some combination of Immunity, Avant, and Rich Gang, in some order. So I think they are pretty good. All right, let's move on. So we've been talking for about half an hour already. Let's talk about Tristana, because last 2 weeks we talked about patch 5.2. I was about to say 4.5. 5.2 we did. We talked about, and 5.1 for that matter. About 15 weeks of patch notes, and we've got patch 5.3 to talk about. But let's talk about the new Tristana, because she's been out for a little while now. I really love her new kit. She has some pretty decent changes. So If you aren't familiar, basically they've really changed how her E works, as well as tweaking some of the stats. So her attack speed growth has been reduced, her base armor has been reduced, her base health has been reduced. The range increase on her passive has also been reduced from 9 to 7 per level. But the big difference is her E. So now instead of putting this damage over time with grievous wounds and all this sort of stuff, now she throws this explosive charge either on an enemy champion or a tower, and then it does a certain amount of damage, which increases by 25% for the next 4 auto attacks you do. So basically it builds up. It's like a grenade that builds up and does AoE damage, and she can trigger it early using her rocket jump. And I should also mention they've nerfed the AP ratios on Tristana, which pretty much gets rid of AP Tristana, which I'm ecstatic about.
Who isn't excited about that?
Well, probably AP Tristana players. So what do we think of the new Tristana? I mean,
let's just say, holy cow, did Riot's design team impress me by changing one ability. They added a whole bunch of synergy around her kit, and it's so much more interesting than right click.
Yeah,
I'm still shooting them.
Yeah.
They've added a whole bunch of synergy around the kit just by adding this. So props to the goddamn design team behind Riot. I was really impressed.
I mean, yeah, for a kit that I haven't actually played yet, I've played so much against it in bottom lane, and it's just one of those interesting kits to play against, because if she gets halfway through the combo, and it's one of those points where there's so much play, counterplay, so she hits you with E, you just run away. That's what you want to do, straight up, right? But if Tristana's CC'd in that sort of range, and she's got 2-3 charges on you, and she thinks she might be able to kill you, does she jump on? There's so many thought processes going on around the kit now, instead of just land A, auto attack a couple of times, run away. You know, her kit is now fun, it's interactable, and
it's really find her identity.
Yeah, she's no longer just this person that's like, oh, I lost lane, okay, I'm just gonna suddenly hit level 15 and press Q, and no matter what I've built or where I'm at in my build, I'm going to do a lot of damage and there's nothing you can do. Now she's at that point where she's decently increased in range, her DPS is still nice and high, but she has this ability to still jump around the fights, do funky amounts of damage depending upon how she plays that fight, and if the target she hits with that initial grenade does get carried through to receive all 4 hits, you know, her damage has been increased. She now has splash damage from her E onto other champions,
which I think is huge.
Yeah, that's just, and you know, there is, and that's what I mean. There is interactability from her kit, and then there's also the fact that her opponents can now, like, it's like having a zillion Q landed on you. You don't want to go near your allies when that's about to mark up. So I just like it. It's a really, really fun, funky change.
Yeah.
Steve's actually in the chat, and he's like, "Oh, I hate this kit," and he hasn't quite said why in the chat, but I can probably understand. Off the top of my head, I can probably be like, "Okay, I think I know why he hates this kit." When they made all these changes, they dumped on her base attack speed, which they already dumped on before because she was so crazy overpowered. And they've nerfed her range when she had like crazy high range. Now she's got a little bit more than Caitlyn, instead of like insane amount of range. Riot have absolutely dumped on her late game. Well, she's still got a strong late game, stronger than most, but her late game has just been cut down so much. She's been given a lot of mid-game power instead of it, but her late-game power as a hyper carry has been just a little bit shit on. And I'm going to read what Steve's saying in the chat. Just Carrot, fill me in.
I mean, I quite like it because, well, firstly they took away grievous wounds, which I think is a really painful ability to have as a damage over time in the early game in the bottom lane, just because you use pots so often during those trades. So to have this frustrating damage over time on you, that's, it was on a relatively low cooldown. I think it's a good remove.
I mean, lasted too long.
Yeah, I mean the base damage is 60, so it basically means you can do 120 damage at level 1 of her ability, and you'd probably be leveling up her E first. So I mean, it's 100 physical damage at level 9, you know, once you get to level 9, you have 100 physical damage, and that turns into 200 physical damage with a 1.10 bonus attack damage ratio. I think that's actually quite a bit of damage. Like, that's actually... And she can use it on towers, which I think is incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, okay. Yes, her late game probably isn't as scary as it was. She's still got a 90% attack speed steroid on her Q. But I think her early and mid game is significantly improved.
She's turned more into, yeah, like you said, mid game, and focused a lot more around towers. This change to her E makes her siege, anti-siege, all in the one champion. And I really, it fills a very specific, interesting niche that hasn't really been played upon before, and it's just funky.
I mean, now so she's probably not quite as good as Jinx. Like, Jinx is probably still the queen of tower pushing. But I think she's probably, you know, get to that stage where, you know, like, particularly, I mean, one of the things that she can do is she works well in that siege situation where you move up, do a couple of attacks, then back off, because you can throw the explosive charge, do 2-3 attacks, then back off the explosive charge, then blows up. And I think the AoE damage is much more helpful, particularly in the early stages of the bottom lane, because essentially if people position badly like they do in bronze, you're going to hit both as a support and the marksman with that AoE damage.
And for the creep wave, then you're going to come back and explode the creep wave on top of them as well.
So, I mean, yeah, that's probably what I like most about her kit in that regard. But Vic, did you want to pick up what?
Yeah. So Steve's just said in chat, you would pick Tristana previously because she had a really strong level 2 and a really strong level 6, and then you'd ease off for a bit and wait till you had the best range in the game. He says now you can easily just pick Kog'Maw, Twitch, or Caitlyn and have a lot less risk there. He says she's too high risk to pick to take as a late game champ. Part of what made Tristana so powerful late game was her incredible weakness in the mid game team fighting phase. I'm not sure if I agree with all of that, to be honest, because I feel I feel like she has gotten a considerably large amount of mid game power. And when I originally saw the changes to her E, I said, "Wow, this can be absolutely brutal if they don't knock down like her range or whatever, or her late game power," because they added a lot of, I reckon they added quite a lot of mid game power with this explosive charge, specifically being able to put it on towers and just chunk them massively.
Yeah, I mean
that was a really big,
and they gave her ability damage as well, which is something she didn't have previously. Like ability, casters in the ADC role are normally the mid-game strong ones, and the early game strong. That's your Graves, your Lucian, Varus, I guess. Corki, yeah, like they're the mid-game strong ones because they cast. And Tristana previously heavily auto-attack. Most of her damage came from auto-attacks. Auto-attacks come stronger late in the game when you got more crit, more armor pen, more attack speed. So they've added ability damage into her kit, so she's now semi-caster, which has obviously given her more mid-game power and left her with a little bit of late-game power to work with. Which is weird, because she still has good early-game power as well with that 2 to 3 all-in.
But I think the best part about the change about the entire kit is the fact that she can't just walk up, hit E now, and she's guaranteed a certain amount of damage. If she hits E, she's guaranteed a really, really small amount of damage, but if she continues the trade, or her opponents want to continue the trade, for whatever reason, they're risking more amounts of damage. That is a very balanced playstyle in itself.
And then sorry, keep going.
Yeah, the numbers, obviously, they would need to be tweaked around to make the numbers, obviously, more balanced. But the playstyle and what Riot are trying to generate with this change is a balanced change. There's also the fact that with her Draw a Bead passive, previously, why you would pick Kog'Maw is to have that really, really long percentage health damage. Long-range percentage health damage. Twitch, really, really long range. Tristana, why would you pick anyone else? Because she's got this really, really long range that has no cooldown. No cooldown whatsoever. And it's up all the time. So you can be sitting back at 703 range and going bang, 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 bang. Turret's only got a 97 range to hit me. I think it's 97 range. It might only be 47 range. But yeah. And that was a trouble. Whereas now... And then she had the escape on top of it.
Yep.
That was just really unbalanced.
Yep.
And with this change, nerfing her down in that range puts her very on par with Caitlyn, and that's what they want to achieve, because Caitlyn has this non-cooldown on her range, but she's also got a little bit of mobility, and she's got this slight bullying in the early game, but she's not as big a threat. Now with her as similar range as Caitlyn in towards the later game, but higher DPS, and also that same mid-game sort of strength, power, and being able to push the turrets, she's very similar to Caitlyn, but, you know, different enough that she's also a different kind of composition that you want to bring to her. And then now you've actually got very different reasons to pick Cogmore and Twitch than you do to pick Tristana, and that's what they were trying to differentiate.
Yeah.
You've got 3 champions that effectively did a somewhat very similar sort of job with slight differences in tweaks, whereas now you've got DPS Caitlyn, and you've got Caitlyn, which is the poke, obviously. Now you've got in the longer range category, you've got Twitch, who is that DPS option, and you've got Cogmore, who is that poke, then come in for a little bit more DPS that takes a little bit longer to build up, you know, whereas obviously Twitch has got that assassin, but still long range DPS sort of playstyle, he can burst, you know. There are now, and that's the important part, they're segregating these 80 carry playstyles so that now they all fit into their own little niche and different reasons why you pick them. So that's what this change was entirely aimed at.
I also want to point out that her W, the base damage on her W also increases with the amount of charges on her explosive charge, or the amount of attacks the basic attacks you've done. So essentially, if you hit them 4 times and then rocket jump, you do basically double the damage on that as well. So you're talking about 300, level 5, 360 magic damage instead of 250. So that's actually bringing that into a combination. So you're going to explosive charge, hit your Q, get 4 attacks, jump. They're going to die, and then you jump away, or maybe you buster shot them and then you jump away. So I mean, I think,
and at the same time, the playstyle of actually jumping or flashing behind them, ulting them after you've hit them with the E to continue the trade, now has some benefit and worth to it. So, you know, you've got more reason to stack up, and you've got a better way to apply your E stacks, then jump on top of them as well. So there's a better playstyle, you know, whereas before it was just like, ours purely, you know, for, I'm going to flash behind them, or I'm going to jump on them, I'm going to flash behind them, and then I'm going to E them, or R them back into the turret. Now you don't want to do that. Your R is actually about that repositioning. Or I don't want to fight you right now. Or I'm going to flash behind you, hit you with the R, get 3 more auto attacks down, then jump on top of you for the bonus damage and explode. So there are now a lot more options to her as well.
Yeah. And also, I mean, something which is probably a hidden power was Grievous Wounds. So Grievous Wounds is terrible in the early game. It distorts her power budget in the early game, but also in the late game, because if you think about in late game, if you're dueling with another marksman, a lot of the, they're gonna have a lot of sustain through their, through whatever lifesteal items they got. And Grievous Wounds kills all of that. So by taking that away, you can actually put more power in her kit, because you're not just crippling another marksman through this one particular aspect of an ability. So I mean, people might say, well, she's not as powerful as she was. Well, she's different for a start, but now they have, a bit like with the with all the changes they did in the early game, they have more levers to adjust her and to increase damage on this ability and fix this other ability, rather than having this one uninteractive, boring, crappy ability that distorts the heck out of everything.
Now all the abilities do multiple things now. Like previously was this button gave me more damage, this button made me attack faster, this button made me jump, this button knocked them away. Now it's this button puts a bomb on them, and I can make that bomb stronger, and then I can make that bomb stronger again with other abilities. This button makes me jump. I would normally use it to jump away, but if I use it to jump in, I can do other things. More damage. So there's
that's exactly it. And so, firstly, she's more fun. Secondly, she's more balanced, and she's more and healthier for the game. So, I maybe the numbers aren't exactly right. Steve if he was here, I'm sure you'd all hear this from himself. Unfortunately, he's in the Twitch chat only. But he's saying essentially, why would you pick her instead of anybody else? Well, maybe not yet, but they can fix the numbers. They can get her to that point where she's not distorting the game so badly, and she, and they can get her in a better spot.
Yeah, and it's we're all going to be guilty of it, but when the second the change comes out, we're all just going to straight go ahead and compare her to the old Tristana and say, "Oh, we picked old Tristana for these reasons.
Yep.
We're not going to pick her for these reasons anymore.
Yep.
So we're not going to pick her anymore.
Yeah.
We're not going to do it anymore." But
I mean, how many times have we seen?
Tristana's pretty much evolved into a different champion now.
Yeah.
So we're not. So it's hard to compare her to the old one when we're going to be picking the new one for different reasons. This is just going to take some time to work out.
Yep, that's it.
When the Koreans start playing.
They're two different champions now.
Yes.
I mean, how many times do we have a rework and everybody says, it's over. You know, they're no good anymore. You know, why would you ever pick them? Like, they said about the Rengar after his rework, and that was nothing but, you know, they've reworked Rengar, and then there was, people were saying, Rengar's done. You know, he's no good anymore. And there was like 5 months of nothing but Koreans playing. Yeah, Castellan's a great one. So, yeah, there's always a bit of doom and gloom, but
It's actually in the market for another rework.
Yeah, because he's still got him down.
He's still the problem with Castellan is the mobility, but they want that to be his unique identity as a champion. The problem with Tristana was no matter what you did, she was always just going to be this threat at some point in the game because of the way Infinity Edge works, because of the way Blade of the Ruin King could be potentially comboed in there, or you could go a Bloodthirster and hit so hard, so often with that Bloodthirster that you made Blade of the Ruin King an irrelevant choice as an item. You know, that was the problem. She just was not healthy for the game. Yeah. Castellan's problem is the same thing, but that's his unique identity that they want to pursue. They're going to look at a different way about it because at the moment they're looking at nerfing him to the point where he's always going to get to this late game fantasy. There is no way they can stop that. Mid game, early game, they have to do something to him to stop that. And this is probably a really nice segue to actually get into the patch 5.3 notes.
Well, I was actually just having a quick look through and I'm thinking it's actually probably more in here than we could probably do in... We've only got about 10-15 minutes left, so maybe we'll answer the question we got from Tribal Mind on Twitter, and we'll come back to 5.3 next week because I'm sure it'd be also good to have Steve here to talk about some of this stuff. So that's it. Well, I mean, there's just you know, you got Gnar changes and you know Ari changes and the wards and stuff.
I'm sure, and Steve being our meta guy, I'm sure he'd love to talk about it as well.
Yeah. So we'll talk about it next week when we can actually do it all at once and get it all out of the way. So, Tribal, I think it was. Let me just double check.
It's Tribal Mind, yeah.
It's Tribal Mind. Okay.
Shout out to Tribal Mind, my partner in crime in Productions.
All right. Let's.
He might be doing a podcast with DeClaude soon. How cool is that?
That would be cool. All right. So let's. So the question was: people don't always have time to learn complex mechanical champions. So who are mechanically simple champions? And are there champions that are simple mechanically at first that become complex with practice?
Let's start this one with Ashe.
Yeah, okay, let's start with Ashe. Go for it.
And the reason to start it off with Ashe is because Ashe is a very simplistic wholly across the entire kit. There are some champions that portions of the kit are very mechanically intense, like Vayne. The tumble and the microing is very intense, but her normal pattern of laning and wanting to split push and your macro game decisions is generally fairly easy. Ashe is simple across the board. She's slow. She's about the CC from her ultimate. She's not high damage, and she has an ability that helps her get to that higher damage build path that we come to know and love for AD carries by right-clicking. All you need to know is click this person, press Q before you do, and they're going to be slowed down. Fire an ultimate at them, and they're going to be standing still for a little while. That is simple in essence.
I think, in terms of just, like, by comparison to others, I think Ryze is a relatively simple, mechanically, like, a champion. Like, you, essentially, you know, all of his stuff is point and click. There's no skill shots, there's no complex interactions. It's essentially, you just learn the order, which is you press all the buttons as fast as you possibly can in the middle of a fight. And as long as you aim at the right person, you'll wreck face.
Don't you mean Sona 2.0?
Yeah, pretty much. So it's... I think, also he's... there's a bit of complexity in the sense of how you build him and stuff like that, but it's not... He's a really quite a straightforward champion with a lot of... I think he does have some complexity when you start actually trying to unleash the entirety of his kit. Like, he's such a hyper carry, and it takes, you know, that's not something that comes easily. Like, I mean, there's lots of champions that, like all the hyper carry champions, like it actually takes skill to be able to carry very hard with those hyper carries, because there's positioning and items and all the rest of it. So
And not to get completely destroyed in the first 20 minutes.
yeah,
of the
that's
game.
it. That's it. I think and think just in terms of top lane, Renekton's probably he's a pretty simple. Mechanically, like, you know, a champion that's mechanically simple. I don't think he has the same complexity in the late game, because he kind of loses his power just because he just becomes a tank, this big brick that doesn't have anywhere near the mobilities a lot of other sort of like bruiser type champions. So he just basically charges towards somebody else, a bit like Nasus. Like, you know, Nasus. How does Nasus engage a fight? He withers somebody and runs at them. You know, how does Renekton get into a fight? He slices and dices and attacks them. Like, you know, it's you know, where I guess someone like a Jax or, you know, maybe even like a Rengar, you know, Rengar uses the flanks to get around. Like he's
yeah, and the way he uses his Qs as auto attack resets.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
the same
yeah,
for
yeah.
Jax's W, and making sure you get the maximum out of Jax's E. So you wait for that last champion auto attack to hit you right before you pop your E. That's a crucial part because that amps the damage, and you know.
Yep.
Lysandra? Lysandra's a pretty mechanically simple champion, I think, as well.
Oh yeah, no, that's probably true. It's probably true. She's difficult to use though. Like, I mean, she's mechanically simple, but
Yes.
she's just, I mean, she's a mage, so she's squishy. You know, she's mana reliant. Range as well. So like the Claw of Doom, like,
Passive.
yeah, it's true. Well, it's not a very good passive. But I think the Claw of Doom is probably, like, that's the hardest part of a kit, is when to use that to either engage or to disengage. So, now I'm just waiting for
It's
Victor.
just, you're going nowhere. You're going nowhere. You're
Yeah.
going nowhere again. Congratulations, you're still going nowhere.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for Victor to pipe in, because his favourite is mechanically simple, and he's yet to say it. He's not
Right.
paying attention, that's why.
Well, I like when
Tarek!
people ask when people ask me these sort of questions, like who should I play, who's mechanically simple, I normally avoid answering them, because like my way is like, if you like, if find a champion you like and just play them. Like, it doesn't matter how mechanically complex. Although I've coached a lot of people and I've said to them, you can play anyone you want, just don't play assassins yet. Give the assassins some time, because I think the assassins take the most sort of mechanical understanding. Because I'll answer the question, because we've been asked. Tarek is very simple to understand on the most basic of levels. Are you happy? I said it.
He is.
Steven.
He's the easiest to learn.
Steven agrees with me.
Yeah.
It depends what role you're playing as well. I think Malzahar is a really simple pick to learn for the mid lane.
Yeah.
The problem I have with really simple mechanical picks, though, is most of them are not very versatile, and so they're not that good. And you'll really find their limitations soon. So, I guess we are talking about the player who's not really serious about the game, because in the question it said someone who's not really that doesn't really have time to play it that much or whatever. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, I play a reasonable man, and I still wouldn't play an Azir, or I still wouldn't play. There's a bunch of jammies I wouldn't. Yasuo, I wouldn't play, just because I just don't have that level of mechanical gift. I mean, I'm 30. I'm in my 30s. You know, so it's just not. You know, I'm not going to be a Bjergsen. So, yeah, I don't know. Garen's actually. Sorry, just before I forget, Garen's another very simple champion who's a lot of fun.
anyone who's got recommended next to their name in the profile, but yeah,
Yeah.
I just think, like, simple champions all have their limitations, so I think it's perfectly fine to play mechanically simple champions. Like I said, Malzahar's so simple. He clears waves and he kills people. That's all he does in the whole game. There are mechanically better picks, like Syndra. She does the same thing. She kills people, she clears waves, but she's got a bit more versatility in there because she has a long range stun. She can pick a bit better. So mechanically not difficult champions. That's fine. There are plenty of them. Like Warwick jungle. Someone in chat said Volibear jungle's a good one to learn. And they said on Trinity Force that he teaches you a lot of things. So there are plenty of picks out there. I like Caitlyn. Like, whenever I get
Caitlyn's
ADC,
a little bit different. Caitlyn's, I would actually class Caitlyn somewhere in the mechanically sort of medium to advanced range. Because you
Yeah.
need to know how to utilize her range a lot better, because learning to harass in between last hitting creeps
well, yeah,
yeah.
Also, her 90
I've-
caliber net is a
I've-
bit
yeah.
unintuitive.
Yeah, see, I've coached a lot of people, and normally, like, I'll let them play whatever they want. Like, I'll say, yeah, if you want to play that, that's fine. It's good that you want to play who you want to play, because if you enjoy playing a champion, you'll want to learn them more than, like, oh, he told me to play Ryze. Ryze is really boring. I better learn him anyway because I was told to. Like, if you enjoy someone, definitely play them. I'm not going to stop you from playing it, but normally when I'm coaching people, I sort of wean them away from assassins, and I wean them away from AD carries. Because I think they're very mechanically intense.
Yeah, that's right.
80 carries, 80 is
especially the squishiness of those champions. Like, you come into a game, especially with like Smurfers running around when you're pre-30 and whatever, you're just dying. Like, you fucking run into those annoying ass Katarina or Riven bot lanes that just stomp on you in the lane. Like, what do I do? There you go. There's my soap.
ADC is definitely the most mechanically advanced role. Old Soraka is actually a really, really good champion for learning the game. I taught Jess sort of how to initially play with Old Soraka. She's enjoying learning to play Volibear. Like, these are some of the champions that she liked, that were easy to teach her, and she liked the champion archetype of. She liked being a big fuck off bear that throws shit around, and it's easy to teach her.
I think, like, Vladimir's probably not a bad one as well, because, I mean, really, I guess what you want to evolve is complex interactions and skill shots. Vladimir has...
If there's hidden power there as well, like, you need to, like the person using it might not understand the hidden power as well. Like, Vladimir's E, I didn't know what the hell, and his passive, I didn't know what the hell any of that did. I didn't know what Tarek's passive did when I first played Tarek.
Most people don't understand what passives do, because passives are inherently unseen. So, I mean, just in terms of, like, you know, as long as you're within a certain range, Vladimir pretty much does all his damage without you having to point and click at anything. Like, just the champion. So, I think that's why he makes it relatively straightforward, where he does have a good degree of depth. Where some of these other, like, someone like Tarek, there is no advanced Tarek strategies. Like, he is exactly how he looks.
You know, like,
Old Scion was one of the best, least mechanically challenging champions.
Well, like,
AP Scion. Ugh.
Yeah.
Yuck.
Yeah, well, like Tarek. Tarek's all point and click. You can be the best Tarek player in the world. You're probably just as good as the most mediocre Tarek player in the world.
Yeah,
because
that's it.
He has such a low skill ceiling.
Yeah.
Once you work out what the passive does, you know how to play Tarek.
Yeah, that's it. Morgana's not too bad. I mean, she's got a skill shot. And there's in terms of decision making, so when to use the Black Shield. But just in terms of, like, compared to, say, Sona, she's a lot more mechanically intensive, because you need to position right. Morgana's, like, long range, relatively uninteractive. So I think she's probably one of the better supports if you want to, when you're starting out, and still be useful.
I reckon if Ralph was still on this podcast, he would have said Leona.
Compared to others, she's pretty...
See, now Steve, I mean,
pretty
supports is an interesting one, because you do have... So I think support is probably the role with the most variety in terms of skill cap. You can be playing the same champion as what the pros are playing, but in support role, it can be so massively different a skill gap, and the support influences the lane much more than a lot more people realize. So, for example, Annie, knowing when and how to use her cooldowns and her mana bar is an extremely important thing. And her passive, count that as a cooldown, because that is rated off every other cooldown. You have to think of that as an actual cooldown, and that's when you start to play Annie a lot better. Things like Fiddlesticks and knowing how to call them. Janna, Braum, all these sorts of champions, yes. And I mean, Steve in the chat has mentioned Alistar. Alistar, yes, I mean, initially, he's a mechanically easy champion. You've got to heal, you've got to knock up, you've got to get the hell away from me, and then you've got a damage debuff. That is very, very simple.
True.
But when you finally learn that you can WQ combo, then he becomes a lot more intense as a champion. And when you finally get access to flashes or summoner spell as well, the mechanics and whatnot of the Alistar as a champion becomes so different. and the way Braum combos as well, the way he jumps around the minion wave, and different ways to use his heal. Braum is one of the, I would say, probably one of the harder supports to learn straight off the bat.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and Blitzcrank as well. Blitzcrank's another one of those. Yeah, so
I mean, supports have got a lot harder. Like once they took out old Soraka, sorry, all the supports became because they're much more interactive. Like everybody,
especially Tarek.
Yeah. Well, actually, sorry, no, Tarek's the last one. He's the last uninteractive champion.
Well, when they changed the passive, it became very, very interactive. But I play him top.
Well, I mean, when I say that, like, he's still not great. I mean, he's just not in a good spot. But like, leaving aside Tarek. All the champions are a lot more like there's a lot more incentive to actually engage in whatever particular fashion they do that. You know, it's a lot more. Bottom lane's a lot more interesting than it used to be. Like once you take out old Soraka, because old Soraka was the last like passive farming holdout.
Soraka was the entry level support. That's how everyone got into support.
Yeah, and she was just like, you know, she just sat back and didn't have any sort of real meaningful interactions with the enemy bot lane, which was just boring and terrible.
I mean, even look at her old Starcore, which did obviously shred resistance. When you start getting into the number punching game, she does become a little bit more mechanically intense, but not much.
Yeah, still standard.
And that was only on different lanes.
And that's when you played Soraka mid lane.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
It. Remember when people were doing that?
Yeah. Thank God it's not. We're not.
She got this skill ceiling again.
Yeah. All right.
Now she's dumb.
Well, I think that probably covers that question. Of course, if anybody has any, sorry, Vic, did you want to say something?
I just want, like, real quick. Jungle and support are probably the two roles people don't even know exist. So they're probably going to be a couple of the harder ones to learn straight up. Like, there's particularly pre-30s, which we've sort of just decided they're the ones we're talking about. Pre-30 people, a lot of them don't even know jungle and support exist until they start leveling up and like, hey, what's that person taking that one summoner spell with the hand and the lightning bolt? What are they doing? And then they sort of work it out. But so those ones and all, especially jungle now that it's gotten the camps have gotten harder. Like you really need to know your clear paths, and you need to know how to properly kill them without taking too much damage. So
yep,
there you go. I need
all
to
good
talk
things.
To Roscoe in the chat.
All right. Well, I think that probably covers it for this week. This has been episode 74. We'll be next week. We'll be talking about patch 5.3. We'll be talking about OPL week 2. And I just want to make mention the battle arena is actually going to be Friday this week. Because Trippy Guy and Archer Darren will be it's just better for them and not conflicting with OPL. So make sure you check it out. So be in the OzLoL chat room around about the same time. So I think it starts around about 7 or 8ish. And of course, if you follow us on Twitter or Facebook, we'll let you know what's going on. So yeah,
be sure to interact on Twitter as well.
Yep,
absolutely. Yeah, if you've got anything you want us to sit down and discuss about the game whatsoever, whether it's anything from my shoutcasting experience, anything from Victor's podcasting experience, or anything else from Victor's coaching experience, Carrot's experience hosting and streaming and stuff like that, or
I do coaching sessions, by the way. So you can ask for
anything like that. What it costs you an hour to hire out a Victor?
It's totally free right now because no one knows who I am.
First lesson.
Yeah. Oh, actually, there's a couple of bits of show news, like scene news I've got to mention. So there's actually people. Steve is in the call. Go away, Steve.
You spoiled it. He was gonna do that.
Yeah, he's messing up my stream, man. You can't be messing up my stream.
Damn Steve.
Damn Steve.
Scott will do his sign out.
Yeah, I'm gonna kick him out. I'm gonna remove us into this group. See you, son. I'll let him later, just right at the end. He was getting in too early. Uppity Steve. So shoutcasters. So Oceania are looking for shoutcasters. So if you have an interest in that, if you go to the League of Legends website, you can find how to contact with them. And also they have a tipping competition where you can win a share of 100,000 riot points. That's on offer. So
okay, they've updated the tipping competition. All right, I need to go tip.
So
tip.
So yes, Battle Arena this Friday, and so Twitter. So I'm at Carrot Colossus. Victor's at Victor Pradley. Is it underscore Pradley or one word?
Oh, it's all one word, Victor Bradley.
At Stephen Garstone is for Cleric. And
underscore Stephen underscore Garstone.
No, it's not. It's just at
Isn't
Stephen Garstone.
No, I have been lied to by Twitter.
And at Ranconius.
Damn it.
So now let me just add Steve to the call because I kicked him out.
He wants to do it.
He wants to do it. He's the video. Yeah. Because he's not doing audio, so I'll have to splice him in. So that's gonna be tricky. All right. So this has been week 74 of the OzLoL podcast. We'll be back again next week with more OPL discussion and patch 4.5.3. We'll see you then.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. That was so